Hello and welcome to Kitco Mining with me, Paul Harris, here in Dawson City in Yukon in Canada at the Yukon Mining Investment Conference. Today we're talking about critical minerals and critical metals, and I have great pleasure to be joined by Brandon Macdonald, CEO of Fireweed Metals. Good morning, Brandon.
Good morning.
Fireweed's had quite a 12 months. In the past 12 months, zinc has been put on the US critical minerals list. You've got the company's got an investment from the Lundin Group. You put out a resource on your Mactung project. A lot going on. What's your summary or review of the past 12 months?
I mean, it's a whirlwind, right? So, I think this time last year, we hadn't even started our drill program yet, and we put out our best ever drill intersections by November, like a best ever on the project. Shortly followed thereafter with an investment from the Lundin family. They put in $20 million and as a part of a $35 million financing, which was our biggest financing by a factor of almost 3. So this positioned us for this year, which is going to be our biggest ever drill program by a huge margin, like as big as the last 4 years combined. And putting out the resource on Mactung, kind of reminding the market what an incredibly special project that is, I think really triggered the recent move, the recent move in the share price that finally got some bit of a sail or wind in our sails.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the main things you're exploring for, zinc and tungsten. They're not two of the metals that many people are familiar with, although they're very sort of critical industrial metals. Zinc is perhaps better well known than tungsten. What's special about tungsten?
Well, tungsten has 3 qualities that make it incredibly unique and difficult to replace, if not impossible to replace. So it's got the highest melting point of any metal, it's the hardest of any metal, and it's, I think, the 3rd or 4th densest, being just slightly denser than gold. So for that reason, in certain applications, there's no substituting it, right? If you need something that's extremely high temperature and extremely hard, you got no choice but zinc, or sorry, tungsten. So this makes it, extremely critical to heavy industry, for manufacturing, makes it critical to mining, makes it critical for aerospace, defense, integrated circuits, a variety of things like that. And China's stranglehold on the market, they control about 85% of mine supply, and their refusal to export anything other than a, final product really limits, foreign industry's ability to work with tungsten.
Okay, so the fact that you've recently put out a resource on your tungsten project, I mean, that seems to be hugely significant. What's the path forward for Mactung now?
Yeah, and I mean, look, what the resource reiterated is that this is, we called it the largest high-grade tungsten deposit in the world. I think that's pretty safe to say. It's certainly the best tungsten project outside of China, which makes it strategic, right? And we recognize this is a project that the previous owners, before their bankruptcy due to a failure at a different project, had taken through the environmental assessment, got a positive recommendation to proceed to final licensing. They had a feasibility study on it. So we want to kind of pick up where they left off, right? Like we'd like to take this to final licensing. We need to refresh the feasibility study, and we'll first start by refreshing it with a PEA that'll be out later this year. But we intend to start building this within hopefully 4 years.
Okay. Now, given it is a critical metal, is there potentially funding available from the US government, the Canadian government, other Western governments maybe?
Yeah, I mean, so Canadian government naturally, they've put together this new big pot of money for infrastructure to critical mineral projects. That our zinc project and our tungsten project are immediately adjacent, gives us double the leverage to negotiate with the Canadian government on that. And then through the Resource Gateway, funding, they've already committed $71 million to our access roads. So we see pretty good chance, I think, with the Canadian government for sure. I would think we'd be one of the standout opportunities for deployment of those funds. Now with the US government, they have the Defense Production Act, the DPA, and under that Title III allows for them to fund up to 50% of feasibility level work on critical mineral projects. You've seen, like, for example, I think yesterday, the announcement of funding for, was it Graphite One in Alaska?
Oh, that came out, did it?
Yeah. So, we intend to apply under the same mechanism. Under the Defense Production Act, Canada is considered effectively the same as the US for any decisions and deployment of capital under that. The U.S. Department of Defense highlighted tungsten as one of their top concerns for defense supply chains. Look, we've got to make our case to the U.S. government, and then there's a long way to go on that. But it certainly seems like we'd be a good candidate for it. It feels like we'd be a good candidate.
I mean, in terms of, sort of building a zinc mine and a tungsten mine and producing a tungsten product, is that very similar to building a gold mine or a zinc mine, or are there sort of noticeable sort of differences, skill sets, etc., that you'll need to be able to do that?
There's nothing particularly radical about tungsten processing. Like, it's a combination of gravity and flotation separation. So this is stuff that's used in all other types of metals. And the product is a concentrate, which you'd be sending to, refiners to be making their products out of. So it's pretty straightforward in that regards. There's no radical experimental processing. There's no, like a graphite or whatever, you've got different quality of products. You don't have that sort of vagaries with tungsten, so it should be pretty straightforward. I think the big question marks is that the tungsten market doesn't trade much on the spot market. It doesn't have standard terms and conditions like a copper concentrate marketing or zinc concentrate marketing. Offtakes can be almost bespoke, right? So we recognize that there's more work to be done on securing stable, long-term, offtake partners than there might be on a more traditional metal.
Given that the bulk of the market is in China, does that mean there's not necessarily a lot of good, reliable sources of information or experience that you can lean on as CEO to inform yourself and your company's decisions?
There's tungsten mines in Spain, Portugal, Austria, Vietnam, Bolivia. I think that they're starting one up in South Korea and Australia. So that they collectively represent a very small slice of the market, but there is enough ex-China trading that we're not totally in the dark.
Okay. Now, you mentioned that this year is going to be your biggest exploration program by far. What are the main goals? What do you want to achieve with that?
So, all the drillings at our Mac Pass zinc project, I would say half the drillings at our boundary zone, discovery, we don't have a resource on that zone. And we haven't refreshed the resource on Tom and Jason in 5 years. The ambition is to define the biggest and best resource we can for publication early next year. We're not targeting infill to go from inferred to indicator or anything. It's we're targeting the biggest and best inferred resource we can to give the market a sense of the scale of the opportunity.
Okay. Thank you. Now, let's talk a little bit about roads and infrastructure. The projects are located in sort of northeast Yukon, very close to the boundary with the frontier with Northwest Territories. You mentioned that you've already been able to access some sort of road funding. What's the potential sort of time horizon and the development sort of scenario for the roads and the infrastructure that you will need?
Well, so we're expecting the Yukon government to hopefully in earnest be deploying money on our road next year. And if we can secure more funding on that, I think they'd be likely working on it the next 3 or 4 years comfortably, right? And it's not just our project that benefits from that. Obviously, we've got Mac Pass and Mactung, which will use that road. We'd like to talk to the government about a power spur as well. But Snowline's discovery would rely on our infrastructure, as would any potential discovery that a Rakla or Onyx makes as well. That new emerging gold district that's basically surrounding us, also going to be reliant on the same infrastructure.
Now, one of the issues there, is my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is one of the issues is whether roads for mining projects should be sort of public access or just mining access road. There's potentially some new legislation being developed by the territory to address that issue. What's going on there?
So the new resource road regulations in Yukon, which are due to be finalized within a few months, I believe, allows for truly private resource roads. And these would be governed by the Energy Mines and Resources Division rather than highways. And what this means is that Fireweed can have an access road, or maybe we can share an access road with a Snowline that we gate, that we can control access on, that we can forbid hunters from using. Because that's a big concern from First Nations, that if I push a road 15, 20, 40 kilometers into wilderness, under the current regs, hunters get to use it, right? And that's a tough pill for them to swallow, that, you know, if they're seeing diminishing caribou populations or something, for this wilderness that is untouched to be opened up, right? So these new regs are important, and really allow, you know, because you've got a situation where the First Nations and the mining companies want the same thing. We don't want hunters using our roads, right? And we don't want potential hunting to sink a mining project. If a mining project gets sunk, it should be because the mining project doesn't work, right? Not because their road is going to be used by hunters. So we're excited about those regulations. We plan to submit a permit for a road out to boundary zone, you know, shortly after those regulations are finalized and announced. And I think that's going to be part of a bigger, you know, potential system of roads that unlocks the district.
Thank you, Randy. Now, you've got a lot going on. So where do you want Fireweed Metals to be at the end of the year?
Well, to the end of the year, we'll have the new economics on Mactung. I think that's going to reflect that this is a very buildable and near-term project. I think we'll be pretty close to the resource update on Mac Pass, which is going to establish that it's a pretty rare area, that there's not really many zinc projects out there like it, and that it's also unique and truly district scale. You know, I think feels like we're starting to get a bit of recognition, that people recognize what a special couple projects we have, and if we can, you know, carry that momentum into the new year, hopefully we get some love in the markets too.
A lot going on, Brandon. Wish you the best of luck with that. Brandon Macdonald, CEO of Fireweed Metals. And stay tuned to Kitco Mining for more from the Yukon Mining Investment Conference.